Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Just afternoon, 1 minute after it just turned. So, welcome. It's exciting to see all of you. And I'm so excited to welcome Genevieve to share her story with us today in her presentation. I think I'm going to go ahead and just get us started. Usually I give it a minute or two for people to jump in, but I want to make sure that we have all of our time. I just want to let you know that we are recording the session. If anyone is uncomfortable with that, you are welcome to turn your cameras off. Although for the recording, generally it will be Genevieve and her presentation, but I just like to give you a heads up. But with all of that said, I want to again say welcome. I'm so grateful to see all of you. I'm Gina Messina. I'm the director of the Institute for Women, Wellness, and Work. And today we are so incredibly fortunate to have Genevieve Piturro joining us. I feel like Genevieve and I have become fast friends, and I'm just a huge fan of her work. So I just want to introduce you and share a little bit about Genevieve. Genevieve actually started her career off as a successful television marketing executive in New York City, where she spent her career for about 20 years. And a little girl's question changed the course of her life forever. And then she jumped off the corporate ladder. She began delivering pajamas and books to children in shelters, and in 2001 founded the Pajama Program, a nonprofit which has been recognized nationwide for both its success and Genevieve's story. A Yonkers, New York native to immigrant parents, Genevieve earned her bachelor's degree from Fordham University, and today she resides with her husband in Irvington, New York. She has been interviewed all over the place, most recently on Hallmark's Home and Family channel. She's been on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Early Show, CNN, Fox and Friends. She's been in O Magazine, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and I'm particularly a little bit jealous about this. She got to ring the NASDAQ stock market opening bell in 2016. So she has received many awards. She's an international speaker, a personal coach, and just really doing wonderful and inspiring things. So Genevieve, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today. And I will turn it over to you and let you get started.
Thank you, Gina. Hi, everyone. First, I want to say I have no idea what's going on with my name. My name is Genevieve Piturro, but not Piturro. So I don't know how that happened. I didn't touch anything. So anybody who's a techie, see me after. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm going to share a few slides and then I'm going to take them away, because when I tell you what happened one moment to me in my life, I'd rather just it be personal. So I will start sharing and I'll talk a little bit, and then I'm going to take slides away and just talk a little bit just face to face. So as Gina said, I'm a speaker and author and the founder of the national nonprofit Pajama Program. And we've celebrated 20 years now, and I'll tell you how that's going in a minute. And I really wanted to write my book, which I did, and it came out in the pandemic. So it was actually worked out really well, because it's about finding your purpose. And so many of us really reflected and are still reflecting these last months, 18, 19, almost 2 years. So I was afraid of it coming out in the pandemic, but as it turned out, it seems to be helping. So it's about finding your purpose. And I think so many of us are doing that now, right? So as Gina said, I was born and raised by Italian parents. And my dad came off the boat from Italy. He was 15 and he's the only child, and his parents wanted him to have life in America and to raise a family, their grandchildren in America. And when my grandparents and my father got to the dock, my grandmother sneezed and they wouldn't let her on the boat. So for the whole trek, it was just my grandfather and my dad, and I am sure they had a fabulous time, just the boys. And my grandmother didn't get to come to America for a year. So that whole year in America, my dad and his father lived in one of those lived that Italian lifestyle in a 3-floor apartment building, and all the family lived there. So it was extremely traditional, and I still hear all those stories. So that was really a base, that tradition that overflowed from his arrival in the US to his getting married to my mom and raising 4 kids. It was always that family tradition and children. And that's my grandfather and my dad on the boat to coming to America. And I have a lot to be grateful for. And I'm just preparing you to say that although I had so much to be grateful for, and my parents wanted us to have everything, but above all, the secret was they really wanted all of us, starting with me, their firstborn daughter, their firstborn period, to have a family, to get married and have children. And I know that they were waiting for that day. But despite that whole background, that whole family that I loved, that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted the corporate life. I wanted, for any of you who are, I guess, in your 30s, maybe watching Hulu, and then beyond, older, you know Mary Tyler Moore, and that she was my idol. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder and be Mary, and I wanted a job like hers in the entertainment business. I wanted to move to a big city, and I wanted to have a boss like Mr. Grant, and I wanted to have a best friend like Rhoda, and I just wanted to have, of course, that fabulous apartment, and that wardrobe was just killer. So all I wanted to do was climb the corporate ladder like Mary did. And there I went to Minneapolis, so I got to take a picture only with her statue, never met the woman. And 12 years in, I was a corporate executive in New York City in the TV business, marketing, and I loved it. I was a workaholic. And at that point, it was so exciting to me. My friends were in the business. You know, we had our trips, and we had a really exciting life, and just everything that I thought I wanted, but I wasn't finished climbing. I wanted to go further until one afternoon, now 12 years in, alone in my apartment, my co-op in Riverdale, the Bronx, New York, I heard a voice, and it was as soft as a whisper, and it didn't come from my chatty head. We all have those voices, right? It's just chatting, we know them. It came somewhere here. I now call it my heart voice. And it asked me that question, you see, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And it shocked me. I had to sit down, and I realized in literally seconds, no. All of a sudden I felt alone, and I thought, if I don't listen and figure out what I really want, I'm going to be alone like this in 30 more years. So everybody, I can see only some of you, but point to yourself. I'm going to guess that you pointed here, not here. And it took me a long time to realize that naturally we point here, but we don't listen here. This isn't the voice that we are used to listening to. But from my experience, it's the only voice that should lead us. And this should complement what we decide from here is our path. So I call it our heart voice. So I might refer to that. So I'm going to now stop sharing, and I will come back to that. So in that moment when I felt so alone all of a sudden, and I realized that I really was working for a paycheck, I was really working to help others get their paychecks. I didn't have much time for the family that I loved, but I had plenty of time for work and work trips and colleagues that were also on that corporate ladder. But when I realized it wasn't enough, in the next moment, I realized there might have been something to that having children idea that my parents thought was so important and so special in our family. But it wasn't time, it wasn't a reality to have my own. So I thought, how can I bring children into my life. And immediately I remembered a recent news clip and in the papers about some children who were hurt by those caring for them, who were treated cruelly and taken by police from wherever they were living to an emergency shelter in New York. And I called the police station, referenced that memory, that case, and I asked them, in these cases, where do you bring the children? And they were really nice. And they told me about the local shelters in New York that were temporary placement facilities for these kids until they sorted it out. So I called. Now, before 9/11 in New York, you could do that. You could call up a shelter and say, hi, I'm a nice lady. Can I come and read to the children at night? And they would say, oh, you sound like a nice lady. Okay, sure, come on in. Not so easy now. So I was really fortunate to have done it at that time and been able to hear a yes, and was so excited for the week leading up to that, buying children's storybooks. I told them I'd like to come in the evening because I worked, and they said, that's great, you come before bedtime. So I was so excited. So I got all my children's books and I showed up in my pantsuit. They showed me to this room in the shelter, and it was a very, very bare room. I sat on the floor because there were only small little chairs for children and only a few. So there I sat with my bag of books. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw them open the door and I saw these little faces. And they walked about a dozen children in. And the children saw me sitting on the floor. So they sat on the floor with me. And I could tell, I knew this was an emergency shelter, but I didn't know really what that meant, except for that one news clip I saw. But I saw it on their faces. I saw the trauma, I saw the fear, I saw the loneliness, and it filled me with sadness, and it filled me with a desire to do whatever I could in that small amount of time to put them at ease, to try to give them some peace and try to connect with them. So I read story after story, and nobody spoke. The kids didn't say anything. Some of them stared at me. Some of them looked at the pictures. Some of them looked around. Because remember, this was new to them. This place was new to them. And I couldn't imagine what they were thinking, except that they were afraid of where they were and where they might have to go tomorrow, because they had already been through a difficult, traumatizing time. So that was fine. I finished reading, and I took the children to another room to go to sleep. So week after week, I looked forward to that, different children every time. And one night when I went, same thing. And I decided when I finished reading, I wanted to follow where they were taking the children to go to sleep. And I did. And when I peered into that room, which was just as bare as the one I'd read to them, there were 2 or 3 futons and cots, more than one child helped up onto the surfaces. Some of them were huddled together. Some of them were crying. They were in their clothes, which were for the most part soiled or ill-fitting. In some cases, there was something they had to change the children into, but for the most part, the children had just arrived and they were going to sleep that way. And I had all these memories just flooding me of my mom sitting at my bedside, and all the laughter and the stories. And I have a sister who shared a room with me, and 2 brothers who shared the room across the hall. And we could hear each other laughing, and we could hear her stories, and we were begging her for another glass of milk and more cookies. And of course we had pajamas. And when I looked at these children in these little cots in their clothes, I blurted out to the staff, can I bring some pajamas next week? And they thought that was a lovely idea and said so. And they said, yes, that'd be fine. So all I could think about all week was, how many of these children will I see next time, and how many pajamas can I get? So I don't leave any of them out, sizes and genders. And I didn't want anyone to feel like I didn't think of them. So all week, of course, the last thing on my mind was doing a good job, but I had to show up because I had a mortgage and I had to pay my bills, but my heart wasn't in it. My heart was in Kohl's and in Payless and anywhere where I could get as many pajamas as I could for my money. So I trekked back with all the pajamas in bags like Santa Claus across this major big park leading up to one of the shelters. And I got there, and some of the staff took some of the pajamas and put them out on a table, and I held some with me in a bag. And I sat on the floor and I read these children, just like I usually did. but I told them I had a surprise for them when I finished. And I had them stand up and I started to pull out a pair of pajamas for each of the children in front of me. And they each took their pair of pajamas and they went with a staff person to that room that was going to be their bedroom. And one little girl halfway through, she was just afraid of me. I don't know why. I took out a pair of pink pajamas that I felt would fit her. And I said, here are your pajamas, honey. And she just said, no, 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 no. And she just shook her head, shook her head. She was afraid and she just didn't want them. And I didn't know why. I tried again and again. She just refused, shaking her head. So they tried to take her back to the room to go to sleep, but she made it known that she wanted to watch me. So they stood with her staff person on the side and she watched me give the rest of the children their pajamas. I put the ones I had for her, pink ones, over my shoulder. And when all the other children had their pajamas and went into that room, she was standing there off to the side with a staff person. And she came up to my hips. I never knew how old they really were. Sometimes it was deceiving, but I would say she was around 6. And she had a lavenderish top on that was a little soiled, and her pink pants were very, very, very short, like floods. She had sneakers that I guess someone gave them to her. They were huge for this little girl. And her ponytails were lopsided. And she was just frightened all evening. But she was watching me. So I went back over and I thought I had an opening there. And I knelt down. I took those pink pajamas and I tried one more time. And I just said, honey, these are so soft. I know they're going to fit you and you're going to be able to sleep so comfortable. You can keep these and you can wear them every night. Don't you want your pajamas? And she looked at me and she whispered, what are pajamas? What are they? She could hardly say the word pajamas. And I couldn't believe that I had to explain pajamas to a little girl. And I did, and I held myself together because I was just so upset. I was a mix of emotions and I wanted to cry, but I didn't want her to think she'd done anything wrong. So I didn't cry and I explained them as calmly as I could. And she took them and they took her to the other room to put them on. But she turned back when she had them on and she gave me this little smile. And that was the beginning of what I can only call an obsession. The loss of interest in climbing that ladder another rung and the overwhelming emotion to find as many of these children like her and just hand them a pair of pajamas and just give them that love and just let them know that there's one little thing that might help them just a little bit, help them sleep better. So that went on, and I always say my purpose found me. And there were so many things that happened. As Gina said, Oprah heard about it. I got to be on the show. Magazines wrote, people just wanted to come to support because of that story. And I always say, your purpose is not just for you, it's for so many others you don't even realize will be impacted, not just those you're serving, not just those you're working with, but strangers who want to feel and they want to connect with each other. And that story was that for me and for all of us who rallied together for these children. So Pajama Program just celebrated 20 years. We've given more than 7 million pajamas and books to children across the US, and we have 63 chapters around the US, all helping to just send pajamas and books, read to the children. And we can't wait till this pandemic is over, because then we can get back in a room with the children and read to them and hand them pajamas and in person. And that was a real gratifying part. But all that to say, it changes when you find your purpose, it changes everything. It changes everything. And you can't begin to understand how shocked I was, still to this day, knock wood, that it's thriving and these children are feeling, a little bit more love than they were yesterday. So I'm going to continue to share and talk about what I've thought about all these 20 years, because it was working to serve the children these 20 years, but over the years, speaking and telling the story all the time to anybody who would hear, anybody who would listen. It also became about helping people, trying to inspire them to really listen to your heart voices and find your purpose, because it's just the way to spread love and to support each other and to share stories. So I always like to do my presentations in 7 steps with the acronym pajamas, because I say I found my purpose, but I found my pajamas. So P, there are a couple of P's, so I put them both here. There are so many possibilities, and we don't realize that we can choose what's really making our hearts sing, no matter what it is, and bring it into our lives. We can slide it in as just a passion if we really do love our job or we need to keep our job. And for those of us who are crazy enough to leap and to jump, we can do that and make it our life's work. There are so many ways to do that and actually make a living. I never thought in a million years giving pajamas and books to children would be able to pay the rent. But as you know, so many people have incredible ideas and they pay the rent. So it is possible, because the other P is pretending that everything is okay and pretending that you'll follow your heart. You know what you want to do when the kids are out of school, when you make enough money, when you have the time, when the pandemic's over. But pretending any longer is just not okay in my book. So I try to explain that there are a lot of ways to bring your purpose into your life that don't have to be putting everything else in jeopardy. So I ask you to think about if you're in survival mode, if you're doing what you're doing because you're doing it for someone else, responsibilities, of course, people who might not approve, people who know you one way, who are worried if you go to them and say, like, like my father was when I told him that I wanted to leave my job to give pajamas and books to children. He trusted me, but he was really worried. And it was not an easy conversation. And there were others that were total naysayers. But I was staying where I was and really conflicted about the whole pajama thing, because I knew people expected me to be the person they knew me to be. And the promises to yourself are what I mentioned before. You're promising yourself one day. So the A is when you feel you know what that is, what you might want to explore as your purpose. Ask yourself and others a lot of questions about it. That's one thing that I write about that I didn't do. And so many of us are so afraid to ask questions because we feel really dumb. Like we're in our career and now we're asking about child welfare and caregivers and what happens to these children. And we don't know anything and we don't want to ask because we don't want to appear, ignorant. But the world opened up and the answers came when I started asking myself what I really wanted to do every day and what I really wanted to research to see if I could do something other than continue that path that I've been on. So the minute I started asking for help, asking people for what they knew and some different ways I might be able to get involved and really digging deep inside me, the universe opened up and answers came. And the more I asked, the less I was afraid to ask. So these are the few tips I work with when I work with people who might have an inkling of what their purpose is, but they're afraid to say it, or they really haven't taken it past that inkling. So I always say, take an hour and a half, 90 minutes, find a quiet place that you're comfortable in, grab a glass of wine or a cup of green tea and cookies, music or not music, but get a pad of paper and a pen, not a computer. There's magic when you are writing things down. And some of you, I know, already know that. And I didn't, but I found it out. So write down, I have here 3 to 4 things that your heart is is nudging you toward. And it might have been a nudge that's been there for a long time and you keep suppressing it. It might be something new that's come out in the last 18 months. For whatever reason, your life circumstances have changed and you've become aware of something in you that you thought, might be something interesting to do, but you're pushing it down. Write it down. So write down, you can start with 10 things. Whittle it down. Just keep looking at it. And the most important thing is to feel what each one makes you feel. And that's how you'll know which ones to eliminate. And that's when you'll know which ones are really strong, beating your heart strongly, making your heart feel full. Those are the 2 or 3 that you'll end up with. So when you choose the 2 or 3, jump in and start splashing around. And by that, I mean, if you want to work with animals or you want to work for helping, maybe you want to be an advocate for someone who's having a hard time with their health, and you are thinking about getting into the health field that way without becoming a doctor or a nurse, but that you could, of course, do that too. But find out everything you can. If you can, things are opening up a little bit. If you can spend time for even an hour a week in that field, even if you are just volunteering, just go and feel the environment and see what you can do. Who will invite you in to volunteer? Who will answer your questions? Maybe you just connect with people on LinkedIn or on the internet and find people who are doing something in the area that you're called to do. Everybody wants to be asked for their advice. And I have connected with so many strangers just because I've said, there's something in me that's drawing me to your career. I wonder if you have 10 minutes just to answer a few questions for me. And most people will say yes. And just jump in and take a leap of faith that way. It's a safer way than having to make a jump and then ask questions. So ask questions first. People will want to support and answer and invite you to be part of their world. So identify 2 people in each of the areas and interview them about the jobs in that field, what they do, and the pros and cons. And there's always 6 degrees of separation. You will find 2 people, whether they're strangers or you ask a few people you trust to introduce you to somebody that they might know. Then take the first steps. That's the A. Begin a 4-week experiment. An hour in each of the 2 areas you've narrowed it down to. After 4 weeks, take 15 minutes and write pen to paper how those 2 things made you feel. One will come out on top. And then decide, is this something I want to slide into my life in addition to my work? Because sometimes sliding is the right thing for you. And it might be more than enough to fill your heart. And in this time when we're pushing everything, or we have been pushing everything on the back burner to take care of the most pressing issues that our families and that we're dealing with, and our employment and any changes in that field, we've pushed those dreams and that heart voice, we've silenced it. And giving yourself this gift of even just sliding it into your life for 1 hour a week is an amazing gift. It will not only add passion to your life and joy, but it's contagious, and other people in your life will feel that, just like they feel the sadness when you put off again what you really want to include in your life. So bring it into your life and try the slide first, and then you'll know in time if it's something you want to take that jump into. Making the commitment to doing what you want to do for at least an hour a week. So this is something that I've always felt strongly about. I have it right here framed on my desk. I put it up very early when I started a pajama program because I really didn't have anything to lean on. And I knew this quote, and it's very, very powerful. And the first line is powerful. Until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. And the rest of it is really heartfelt. And then it ends with whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. So after a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, see how you feel. Do you feel different? Do you feel like bringing that one little, or maybe those two different things into your life made your life feel more joyful or fuller? Are you happier? Is there something different? Feel like you gave yourself that special gift? That's what brings us that light at the end of the tunnel in the darkest days that we've had. And if you take that jump, that's amazing. And if you slide that into your life, that's just as joyful, as long as you feel that passion for it. And the last A, is to believe in yourself and in the universe. I can't tell you how many things happened at just the right time. And I know you've all had those synchronistic moments. And I know when you have needed something and it's shown up, you just are unbelievably grateful. Well, in my experience, when you're on purpose, those things happen more frequently. And it's just amazing how many coincidences happen when you're on purpose and you're sharing your story and you're just going after it with abandon, whether it's something you're doing on the side as a volunteer, whether it's a side hustle, or whether you've taken that major jump. The universe has a way of aligning itself with you. So learning to trust yourself is not always easy. It took me a while. Still struggle with it sometimes, but if you trust in yourself and you have a North Star, for me, it ended up being my mom. And then I did meet a great guy and I did get married early on. And when I took a risk and told him that I was thinking about leaving my corporate job to give pajamas and books to children in shelters, his first response was, go for it. And so that told me a lot, and that certainly a boost. And so between my new husband and my mom, who believed I could do anything, even though she had no idea how it could be done, I relied on them. And everybody needs cheerleaders. We all need our North Star. So if you can identify one or two, then they will hold you up. Definitely stay away from the naysayers. I'll tell you, I tried to confide in a girlfriend early on before anybody else. And she was also a corporate ladder climber and a colleague, but in a different business. So she wouldn't know anyone in my world to tell. And invite her out for drinks. And I rehearsed what I was going to say. And it really sounded ridiculous, even to my own ears when I rehearsed it. I mean, I'm thinking about leaving my job to give pajamas and books to kids every day. It sounded ridiculous, but I took a big gulp of the wine and I said pretty much exactly that to her. And she said, why in the world would you do that? You have worked so hard. I don't understand. How are you going to pay the rent? Can't you just do this on a Saturday? What do you think you're really giving these kids? You're not giving them a home or clothes or food. You're giving them a pair of pajamas. And it was like being shot at constantly. And it was so upsetting to me. Even with more wine, I was just so beside myself, because I didn't have any answers either. And I didn't know what I was doing. All I had was this voice in me that seemed to be getting louder and louder. And it took me a long time to realize that those North Stars and those cheerleaders you should get them first. And then you can deal with those naysayers. And I did the opposite way. So when I try to help and support others, I always ask them who their cheerleaders are and get them lined up. So to steer your ship, it's important to speak to everyone who will listen. And I told everyone the story. And it was as if they'd heard it from the little girl. I was like channeling her. And they too couldn't believe that she asked me, what are pajamas? And they told people, and it was such a simple little thing that I think people said, oh, we can help with this. we can make this better. And they told people, and the people that came out of the woodwork was amazing. That's the only way we could have and could do 7 million. And that's the only way we can get 63 volunteer chapter presidents around the US. It's just by sharing your story, and other people will resonate, and other people will trust you enough to tell you their story. And can you imagine if we all shared what we really, really want to do with each other, and we all supported that in each other, and we all understood that the traditional path, or the reasons we took the job we did or the path we did, was for a reason other than what we really gave ourselves time to think about what we wanted to do. And if you give yourself that time, then you can figure out where your heart is and what your heart is trying to tell you. And everyone will listen, and you will find those people who will rally for you. It's just an incredible universal attraction. Know that the human connection works miracles. I always say, when I started, and even when I was young, I used to think not everybody has a purpose, just those lucky people, those famous people like Oprah, like Deepak Chopra, like Einstein, like anybody that's changed the world. They were given this purpose, but the rest of us, we've just given an ordinary life. But it's not true. We've all been given a purpose. We all have a purpose. And if we take the time, if we don't know it and are purposely hiding it, then we need to go inward, and we need to think and ask ourselves, what is the reason I'm here? What is my purpose that will bring not just me joy, but others, and serve people just by bringing and sharing that joy. And it's not the power of one that changes things. It's not that person who has that lucky gift. So I heard that too. And even people said it to me, oh, the power of one, look what you're doing. You're one person, you're changing everything. No, that's ridiculous. It's not the power of one that changes things. It's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people. And that, I can tell you, I have a whole book full of so many examples that I never in a million years would have thought would prove that it's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people. One person, one idea. I could just be like a Santa Claus with a bag of books if it wasn't for the human connection. So share with everyone, share your passion. Know that it's not easy to change your path. It's easier to start knowing what your purpose is, but many of us change our path. It's not easy. I talk a lot with people about this. This past Saturday, just had a Find Your Purpose Summit, where we had dozens of people come in person safely, and we had workshops, and every speaker, every workshop leader had been those attendees who know the fear and who know the trepidation and who know the naysayers, but still their heart is leading them. So I say, no more pretending. Give wings to your dream. So just the pajamas recap, the P for possibilities and are endless. You know what they are, you know what yours is, and pretending everything's okay is not okay. Ask yourself and others lots of questions, jump in, start splashing around. Take the first steps, take action, make the commitment. Always, always believe in yourself and the invisible elements in the universe that are all circling around you to help. And speak to everyone who will listen, and you will be steered in the right directions. This is some of my cheerleading squad. That's my mom, and she made up that story to read us at night. The little boy who took a bite of his candy bar and heard, "Don't eat me, don't eat me." And there was a talking peanut in there, and she had us all giggling. So I made her a fake book of it, and that's recent. That picture is just about a year ago, and that means the world to me. And so these are my family and friends. So they mean the world. They'll mean the world to you, the cheerleading squad. So just know who they are and keep them close and rely on them. It's not easy for our loved ones. That's my husband. He doesn't drink, but I think he wanted to start many, many times because If you don't know, if you're not living your purpose or your passion, it takes over. It does become an obsession, especially in the early days. And there's ways to approach the people in your life to tell them what you're doing, because it, it won't be easy a lot of times. And I always say, make sure you bring you, because a lot of times when we're in the traditional path or we're on that road that we've been on for so long, we become robotic and we hide our true selves. And this is the time when it's the real you, and make sure that you bring the real you. People, especially my husband, tell me that I'm like Lucille Ball or Lucy all the time, doing silly things, saying silly things, and I dressed up like her for Halloween, and I don't hide it anymore. I do something silly, okay, call me Lucy. And I have a big, big, big shoe fetish, and it's probably out of control, but it's a lot of fun. And now that's not something I hide anymore. And find what it is, lead your life with meaning, because the next 30 years is up to you. So if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And that's where you can find me. I'd love to hear any stories. I'd love to brainstorm or just listen. And that's all about my story and my feelings about leading with purpose, and my experience that it changes the world, changes your world and the world.